When you're ready, sir.
You're killing people. Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, stated this to car critics of self-driving cars. So today what I'm going to talk to you guys about is how self-driving cars, well, let me start with the motivation. So the reason why you guys should listen to my speech is because self-driving cars are going to revolutionize the car industry. So in the next 3 to 4 years or so, we're going to see a huge change in cars, statistics of cars. So in this speech, I have 3 main ideas, and the first main idea is going to be about the origins of autonomous cars and just the history of them and where they came to be. The second main point is going to be how autonomous vehicles work, specifically the Google car, because that has the most research and development. And lastly, it's going to be about the future of autonomous vehicles and where they'll be in the next 3 to 4 years. So to start with, guys, let's start with the history of autonomous vehicles. So since cars came to be in the early 1900s, since we had cars in the early 1900s, the idea of having smart vehicles and having autonomous vehicles was always a thought in people's heads. So in the early 1950s, we actually had ideas of having smart highways. And within having smart highways, we had, we had all these thoughts of how we can have self-driving cars to make highways more safe and whatnot. So in the early 1960s, once computers came to be, Stanford came out with their lab car that had artificial intelligence that could actually maneuver throughout streets and detect whether or not there's objects in its way or not. So moving forward to the 1980s, we had So moving on to the 1980s, we had Varmos. And Varmos was a German engineering experiment that went from 1986 to 2003. And in that time, what Varmos did was it was a Mercedes van, and in it had all these computers inside of it, to where by the end of 2003, the car could autonomously drive on the Autobahn or the freeway and accelerate, decelerate, change lanes, and do all this within regular flows of traffic. So moving on to DARPA. So DARPA is a U.S. Defense Administration that held an event in 2004 where they had people within their administration. What they did was they had people within their administration create teams, and they set out to set a goal by 2015. They wanted to be able to transport military personnel and have them be transported autonomously through these vehicles. So at first, most of the entries, they didn't really do well, and they had to go throughout the Mojave Desert. But once they had more specific vehicles like this Volkswagen Tiguan, these vehicles could go miles on end throughout the Mojave Desert. So once that research and development came into place, this sparked ideas for such as Google, BMW, these big companies that want to look into autonomous vehicles, which brings us to present day. So next in my speech, what I want to talk to you guys about is how autonomous vehicles work, and specifically the Google car, because since 2010, Google stated that they will have an autonomous vehicle by the year 2020, or 2015 actually. So the Google car, as you see right here, the way that it works is it has a radar on top of it, and this radar has 64 sensors in it. And within that, what does that do? So what that radar does is it creates a 200-meter map around the car. And it detects any 3-dimensional objects and uses GPS and an internal computer to basically map out what objects in other vehicles around it are moving and how fast they're moving. So by having the internal computer and the GPS and altimeter, it's able to change the car's behavior based off other people's behavior on the road. And Google actually stated that their car drove over 400,000 miles without one accident in states such as California and other Midwest states that allow autonomous vehicles, because it's actually a state law that has to go into place. So now that we talked about how autonomous vehicles work, let's look into the future of autonomous vehicles and where they'll be in the next 3 to 4 years. So companies such as BMW, Ford, Google, Apple, all these companies stated that by 2020 and 2021, specifically Ford stated by 2021 they'll have a fleet of autonomous vehicles. Now, that is crazy because in the next 3 to 4 years, we'll have cars that can self-drive. And statistically speaking, autonomous vehicles will eliminate a lot of issues that we have in driving cars nowadays, where textinganddriving.com states that 23% of all driving accidents that occur are due to people texting. So with people not being as focused and distracted by so many other stimuli in our life, self-driving cars can definitely help alleviate this statistic. So what I talked to you guys about today was the history of autonomous vehicles, how autonomous vehicles work, and specifically a Google car, and the future of autonomous vehicles in the next 3 to 4 years. As Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, stated, he said, "You're killing people," he stated this to car critics of the self-driving car, because statistically speaking, self-driving cars are safer than human drivers. So, thank you guys.